Oh my God, that fucking countdown gets me hyped, Bobby. How you doing, man? Wait, I should first say welcome to our second live show together here on the TCK pod, the Candlestick Kids podcast. Look, we're in episode 366. Bobby, I told you yesterday that I always get the episode number wrong. Yesterday's episode number was, in fact, wrong. So Sky set me straight, right? He's the boss. He's doing his thing. He set me straight. Today is 366. And we're jumping back into some coaching changes, continuing the series. We started yesterday, and we won't be wrapping up till the end of next week. But, I like that countdown. Just, it gets me a little hyped up, gets me a little ready to go. How are you feeling today?
I was doing some stretches. I was throwing some punches. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to talk about some changes. Man, it's been interesting so far. A little slow. Only one team each division that's been changed, but the AFC, I'm sure, will have more jam-packed changes for us to talk about.
Oh, there's some teams over there on the AFC. That's why we started NFC. We got to start these games slow, right? Ramp everybody up for the big stuff. We don't want to overwhelm the viewers. Speaking of viewers, hey guys, look, if you're watching this live, go ahead and jump on the comments, send us questions, give us your takes. We'll talk your takes live as we go here if you want to. If you're watching later on YouTube, there's a like button somewhere below me. There's a subscribe and a bell somewhere below me, and you owe it to us to hit all three buttons. Share this shit out with people. You can find us here. Let me show you. I am Dweeze Nuts at Dweeze Nuts on Twitter. It's right below my name. Bobby's at FFX Factor. I capitalized some of the letters to make it a little easier to read. How do you like that?
I love it. Everything you do is great. I'm just happy to be here with you.
Kissing ass already, Bobby. I like it. I like it a lot. Look, we're not the only two guys here from TCK. Lucas _Kaser2 on Twitter. You can find him as well. And Sky's at TCK_pod on Twitter. Find any one of us, find all of us, catch up with us, join the movement early on so that you can be with us when we go off. All right. We're going to continue NFC like we said. We're going to start with the NFC South today. We're talking coaching changes. We'll spend some time on the new head coaches, new offensive coordinators, give you guys an idea what you can expect from your fantasy players if they're playing for these new systems, new coaches, new guys. We'll also just mention each of the other teams in the division. If there's some news about them, what we think about that coaching system, maybe how that system's progressing. We're going to give you everything you need to know from a coaching system aspect and angle here to get you ready for the 2021 season here early on. Bobby, I'm going to let you start because I've been talking an awful lot. Our first team here in the NFC South, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Super Bowl champions. No changes on the coaching staff, but what do we need to tell the people about them Bucs?
Well, it's Tom Brady's going to be his second season, and he, even after winning a Super Bowl, seems like he's going to be motivated to keep going. And I think that him being in the second year with Bruce Arians is going to – you saw the improvement down the stretch and in the playoffs, and I think they're going to build on that. The biggest question mark, though, is their free agents, right? For example, Leonard Fournette, who was a big player in the playoffs and made a lot of big plays for them, is now a free agent. And then Chris Godwin, of course, Rob Gronkowski. Gronk seems like he'll probably re-sign for relatively cheap just to play with Brady again. But Godwin's kind of the big one too. It'll be interesting because they do have some interesting young talent at wide receiver behind Godwin and Mike Evans as well. So with Scotty Miller, etc. So I think when I'm looking at this team, though, I'm going to see there's a room for opportunity for this offense to grow again with a full off season. Because remember, they had COVID, but Brady's Brady and Brady's the GOAT. So Brady figured it out. But at the same time, now they're going to have a full off season to kind of implement the offense, integrate Tom Brady, what he likes, with Bruce Arians, building off that Super Bowl. So I think Mike Evans, for me, especially if Chris Godwin walks, I think he could definitely repeat, be a top 12 wide receiver. This year, he did dominate in touchdowns, but his overall numbers weren't huge. So I think Mike Evans can take another step. I think if Godwin comes back, great. But there's plenty of opportunities across the board for this team. And, of course, if Leonard Fournette walks, I think Ronald Jones is definitely someone that can be back on the top 24 running back map for 2021.
Yeah, those are sort of the big question marks right now on that team, right? If Godwin leaves, which I fully expect Godwin to leave, right? He's got to go try to find an opportunity to be the one who's going to kind of step in there. Mike Evans has always been really up and down season over season as far as touchdowns goes anyway. So, can he kind of sustain that performance? Tom Brady is not Jameis Winston, so it feels good. And then who is going to be the running back? Even if Fournette does come back, who is going to be the guy? They sort of flip-flop back and forth. So a lot of interesting things to watch there. I'll tell you what, from a coaching perspective, though, I got to say I think Byron Leftwich has a long future as an offensive coordinator in this league. It looks like he's developing into a guy that can use his weapons really well, regardless of who they are and what they can do. And you say Tom Brady figured it out, but let's remember it took him 2 or 3 weeks to figure it out. The beginning of the year looked really bad for that offense. So a lot of promising things here. And if you can get the Tampa Bay fantasy assets onto your rosters, probably go ahead and do that. Premium price to pay for a Super Bowl champ, but worth the crack anyway. All right, let's move off to a team that had significant turnover. That's them Atlanta Falcons. Or you can see scrolling on the bottom. Look at how fancy we are, y'all. All 3 new coaches scrolling along the bottom. Arthur Smith steps in here as the new head coach on the team. Dave Ragone, new offensive coordinator, even a new defensive coordinator who's not really new. It's Dean Pease. Dude's been he's 71 years old, has been coaching either college or high school for your lifetime plus my lifetime probably. But let's kick it off with Smith, Ragone. Let's talk about that offense a little bit. First of all, we should say Arthur Smith is going to be calling the plays on this team. Dave Ragone's not. And I want to talk about Ragone before I give it up to you, okay? This guy was in Chicago, has been in Chicago going back to John Fox. He was the quarterback coach. He was the passing game coordinator with Matt Nagy last year in Chicago. And as a Bear fan and somebody who watched a lot of Bear football and kept my ear sort of to the grindstone of that organization, I don't know why the fuck this guy got hired here. It's a head scratcher to me. Clearly, he interviews really well. Like, he was the only guy that Nagy kept from John Fox's regime when he came over. And here he is picking up a job under Arthur Smith, who seems like a really smart guy. I don't know, but like as a quarterback coach, we saw no significant player progression from any of his quarterbacks. As the passing game coordinator, we saw no scheme success stand out over the course of his career. Like, every time he's been either a quarterback's coach or a passing game coordinator, his quarterback and passing game finished right around 20 in the league. I don't get it, but mostly a figurehead, not a play caller. Maybe Arthur Smith just wants somebody to coach up on the sidelines as well to make his job a little harder. What's going on here? And what do you like from Arthur Smith?
So Dave Ragone actually coached with Arthur Smith for 3 years in Tennessee. So that's, like we talk about all the time, it's like the good old boy thing. Like, he's my boy
Who do you
back
know?
in the day. Yeah, exactly. So there is a little bit of continuity there between those two guys from the time in Tennessee. So that's probably why he got the job. And it's funny because they all kind of grew up in this Tennessee Titans. Remember the smash mouth, exotic smash mouth Tennessee Titans with like Mike Mularkey and stuff. And then they both kind of went their separate ways, with Arthur Smith staying in Tennessee when that new regime came in with Mike Vrabel, and they brought in the Matt LaFleur scheme. And then he went to Chicago, of course, which you know about Matt Nagy, so that West Coast style of offense. But when I'm looking at this, the Atlanta Falcons and the Tennessee Titans can't be more different when it comes to how they approach offense. Atlanta Falcons are one of the most pass-heavy teams under their previous offensive coordinator, and then Dirk Hoyter, and then now going to Arthur Smith, who's actually one of the more conservative when it comes to pass volume coordinators in the NFL. So when you're looking at that, you're hoping that Matt Ryan is going to become a more efficient player, and there is numbers to suggest that. So I looked at some of the stuff that they're going to do. One of the things that you notice right off the bat, they're heavy play action. Ryan Tannehill led the team in play action pass percentage, and Matt Ryan actually averaged 6% more completion rate, and actually over 2 yards per attempt higher when he is in play action. So that additional play action should really help Matt Ryan be more efficient. And it's also important to point out there is a connection. Matt Ryan did have Kyle Shanahan for a couple of years, and Matt LaFleur was on that offense. So he does know and have some familiarity with the scheme that Arthur Smith is coming over to bring. So I think that Matt Ryan can be more efficient, but there's no mistake about it. This volume is coming way down. I mean, based on the last 2 years alone, you're looking at 150 to 160 drop back difference between these two teams. That's insane. Granted, yes, I know they don't have a running back like Derrick Henry, and yes, Matt Ryan the pass offense should be the primary, but there's going to be some regression into the mean there. So they're going to lose some targets. And with Julio coming back, the question is how much pass volume can go around between Julio, Ridley, Hayden Hurst, etc. But when I'm looking at outside just the quarterback, the running back position, Derrick Henry, DeMarco Murray, even Chris Johnson, when Arthur Smith was the tight ends coach way back in the day, they gave multiple running backs under Arthur Smith's tenure 275 touches. So this is a prime landing spot for a running back. Like Aaron Jones would be interesting. Chris Carson, maybe someone like that would be very interesting to jump onto this team. Or they draft a kid in the second round. That would be very interesting as well. But they also don't necessarily need to utilize their running backs in the pass game. So that's another thing about this situation where they can bring in like a two-down thumper who can kind of be like a Derrick Henry if they can. Obviously, it's tough to replicate him, but that's opens up the passing opportunities for tight ends. And Arthur Smith is a tight ends coach. So he is, that was his position. He was offensive line, tight ends coach, kind of through the ranks up to offensive coordinator. So I think we saw with Jonnu Smith, they actually had a pretty high percentage of targets goes to tight ends, but he split time with Anthony Ferguson. However, Hayden Hurst does monopolize those looks. He could kind of be still fantasy relevant this year in a more productive tight end offense. I think that Hayden Hurst can still return tight end one value even with this offseason change. I think where the numbers really are going to impact the most is going to be that wide receiver position because A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, very good receivers, did not even touch the volume that Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley saw over the last 2 seasons. So they're going to have to be more efficient. Julio had 150 targets just 2 years ago. And, A.J. Brown in 14 games at 106 comes out to about 120. So what is Julio going to be able to do with, or Ridley even with 120 to 130? So I think that's going to impact them a little bit. I think I might fade them this offseason. But overall, I think it's a good hire for Matt Ryan. But this is my thing. It's going to be first year, he might have a slower start. Second year, I think, is where I'm going to really target this offense.
Absolutely. A couple things that stood out to me, and you made the points already, like efficiency is the big word for an Arthur Smith offense, as it turns out. We saw coming out of 2019, his first season with Tannehill in Tennessee, everybody was saying after that season was over that there's going to be a regression, right? There's going to be a scoring regression because they don't throw the ball enough for him to score this many touchdowns. They shouldn't score as many points. Well, they increased in almost every statistical category in 2020. Maybe Arthur Smith just knows how to run an efficient offense. So I do think, you said it might be time to fade some of these receivers, and I think that's going to be a general consensus. I think I'm going to zig, though, when people are zagging here, kind of go the other way. See if I can get some value out of those guys if they start to fall a little bit. They will absolutely regress in volume. That's going to happen. But I think there's a real opportunity for them to uptick efficiency-wise. Like one of the best things that you can say about Arthur Smith's offense is that each of the last 2 seasons, 75% plus red zone touchdown scoring rate. Like he's efficient all over the field, even when they get in tight. I think the opportunities are going to be less, but each opportunity is going to be worth more for the guys in this passing game. I also think they're going to go out and draft a running back. They just don't really have the cap space to go out and make a move on a big free agent back this year. Probably end up splitting time. Arthur Smith tells us in interview after interview that just because he ran it a lot with Derrick Henry doesn't mean he's going to run it here in Atlanta. He ran it with Henry because he was the best player on the field. I want him to prove that to me before I really buy in, but you have to think they're going to start and end with the passing game. But it's certainly going to look a little bit different. Let's talk defense really quickly, okay? Because my boy Dean Pease here steps in. Okay, this is the second time he's come out of retirement. I should say that he is an alumni of Bowling Green State University. Go Falcons! Me, this guy, and Scotty Miller are all Roll Tide. Not Roll Tide. Sorry, I Ziggy Zumba. Bowling Green Falcons. I don't know why I said Roll Tide. I do. My little brother's thinking about moving to Alabama. I've been trying to talk him out of it all week. Anyway. This dude is a stud defensive coordinator, has been for a long time in the league and in college. I just want to point this out a little bit, okay? He DC'd for New England, Baltimore, and Tennessee, and he did it over 12 years in the league. Eight of those were top 10 scoring defense. 6 times he was a top 6 scoring defense, and he did that top 6 in each of the 3 different cities he played. Here's some of the guys that played under this cat, okay? Teddy Bruschi, Mike Vrabel, Junior Seau, Rodney Harrison, Vince Wilfork, Rosie Colvin, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Haloti Ngata, Terrell Suggs, CJ Mosley, Elvis Dumerville, Jimmy Smith, Jarrell Casey, like studs on defense, Hall of Fame caliber guys on defense. This guy won 2 Super Bowls in 2005 with New England in a nice defensive performance. And I don't know if you're watching Sky, but he also won in 2013 with Baltimore over them San Francisco 49ers. Another defensive performance. It was a high-scoring game, so tricky, but this guy's a great defensive coordinator, has been for a really long time. And Atlanta's defense was so fucking garbage last year. Like, I respect the hire. I don't know who he's got to work with personnel-wise, but if he can get some of that in order, it will allow that efficient offense to work, because they're not going to be desperately scratching from behind every single game.
Right. Yeah, I think another thing we have to talk about too is Todd Gurley's going to be leaving, and I don't see them re-signing him at all. Brian Hill, who's kind of the backup a little bit for the end of the season, he's a free agent. So there's a vacuum of touches going to be available from the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah. So I think, if the draft pick comes in, that's an opportunity to. I don't typically like to draft rookies that much, but when the opportunity is there, you got to take it for that offense. But one of the big ones too is Alex Mack, the center. I think they need to get him re-signed and kind of keeping that offense. So, but overall, I think this is an exciting hire. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm definitely going to be monitoring the Zag part of the offseason if Julio and Calvin really start falling a little bit too big.
Go get that value. Go get that, especially with Julio. He's 35 years old or some shit now. Yeah. He's going to be falling on people's boards, especially with Arthur Smith coming in. But I like it. And I like that you mentioned that offensive line. It was a big problem, although there is reason to hope some young talent has come onto that line in the last couple of years, dealt with some injuries. So some things to fix outside of just the offensive play calling before we can really rely on that offense to be able to be what it is. Because remember, in Tennessee, Arthur Smith had an incredible offensive line for 2 years that made things a lot easier for the team in both aspects of that run and pass game. All right, let's move off of the Falcons. Our next team here does not actually have any new coaching hires. Let me get a different. Yeah, here we go. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube. It's the Carolina Panthers, right? So we are in a second year of a system with Matt Rule there as the head coach, Joe Brady there as the offensive coordinator. I know you love to look at second years in systems, and if you just look at it, like lots of spreading of the field, lots of receivers all over the place, cover every blade of grass. That's what Joe Brady says every time he gets in front of a microphone. First of all, do you like the offense that he put out on the field last year? What do you expect of that offensive system and these players here coming into year 2 in a system?
Well, is Curtis Samuel coming back? I think him leaving is going to be a huge opportunity for guys like DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. What I found extremely interesting was that he did not use the tight end at all. I mean, Ian Thomas was basically a ghost all year. And Joe Brady, listen, I think we're on borrowed time. I think Joe Brady is going to be a head coach sooner rather than later, but him coming back is good news. Now, the other question is there's a lot of chatter about the QB position. Doesn't sound like they're sold on Teddy B. I'm not surprised about that. Teddy B is not the type of guy that's going to, elevate the talent, but he can get the job done to an extent. But I think that's another question mark they're going to have to answer. If they don't adjust it, I actually am still going to buy. I am going to buy these guys. Last year, I talked about DJ Moore especially. I said, listen, he was going in the top 10 for wide receivers. And I just said, listen, the Carolina Panthers under Scott Turner was one of the most pass-heavy offenses in football. And then they moved to this system, and I'm like, listen, they're going to be a lot more balanced. They're not going to be so reliant and throwing as much. And sure enough, the Robbie Anderson sign plus the less pass volume crippled his fantasy value. So, but now it's going to be where he gets drafted because Robbie Anderson, technically, if you base it on PPR, Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel both finished higher then DJ Moore, which blows your mind. But all three guys, top 25 wide receivers, basically throughout the year. And that's what I think when I'm going to view this team is like, I'm buying that second year in the system, even if it's Teddy B. I think their timing is just going to get better. Like we talked about COVID, a brand new scheme in COVID must have been really tough for them. So I think it's definitely a situation to buy. I'm really interested to see where ADPs will fall for guys like DJ Moore. And of course, they played the whole season without CMC. So, I mean, really, that offense could take another step when Mike Davis looked good. Mike Davis looked really good.
And Mike Davis is not, as a Chicago Bears fan, Mike
Yeah.
Davis is just not a very good running back. I mean, he ran like a man obsessed and possessed last year, but come on.
He had his moment. Listen, it seems like when you guys drafted David Montgomery that year, I was actually a little excited for Mike Davis because he looked good in Seattle, took a break with you guys, and then he looked good in Carolina. So I do apologize for that. But
Maybe
same
it's
time,
just the Bears. Maybe they just have a bad place. It's just a bad place to play.
well, Matt Nagy's going to – I have faith. I have faith in you this year. Matt Nagy's going to stop being cute, let Bill Lazor run the offense, and they're going to be good to go. That's last podcast. If you want to know more, go back and listen to it. But anyway – I just think that with CMC, he's just going to add a whole nother wrinkle to this offense, elevate scoring opportunities, and that's going to really help guys like Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, especially if Curtis Samuel's gone. That's going to be a huge target vacuum that's going to go to these other guys. So I am going to buy these guys, especially in the second year.
Yeah, dude, this is absolutely one of my favorite sort of sleeper offenses, if you will, in the league. I think the Panthers are going to be a very good team here coming up in 2021, maybe 2022 before they're where they need to be. And I would almost prefer they keep Teddy Bridgewater on that team because it will be that second year in the system. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he started to get really comfortable with those sort of intermediate 10 to 20-yard anticipation routes and sorts of schemes that Brady was putting out on the field for him. So I'd like to see him there again to see what he can kind of continue to do for the offense. He can't, he's not the go deep guy, but Joe Brady would much rather use his speed to spread the defense horizontally, I think, than vertically anyway. So I think it was a really nice marriage between those two, and I think it can be even better next year. Like you said, CMC's coming back. Lot to love there in a second year of a system. We can get too caught up talking about these brand new coaches, but really year two, I've heard you say it several times now, you get that year two bump if it's the right system with the right guys. And this, to me, is a team that there's no reason to expect anything but that.
Absolutely.
All right. Not exactly year two for this next team, but it's the last team in the division. Sean Payton, Pete Carmichael Jr. are going to run that offense in New Orleans with I don't know who's playing quarterback at this. What are they going to do? I don't know. Dennis Allen's still the defensive coordinator. Obviously the big has Brees even announced his retirement yet? Is he technically gone?
He's working out
retiring though, right?
I think so. Okay.
If he doesn't retire, I will take, let's say 10 shots back to back on this live broadcast one of these days. But what's going to happen to this team? What's going to happen to this offense? Is Jameis Winston still on the team? Are they signing him back? Is he going to get an opportunity at all to play quarterback or not?
Well, he's a free agent technically, so they have to re-sign him if they want to keep him. He's not under contract right now. It's unfortunate that we're coaching changes episode. This is like the most talk about continuity. I mean, Sean Payton outside of Bill Belichick is like the longest standing coach, and he's an offensive mind. He's a wizard. I think the one thing I will say though is Drew Brees over the last couple of years, we kind of saw them kind of shrink the offense down. They're not taking as many shots anymore. They used to be like 5K passing yards every single year, and now they've kind of moved to more of a balanced attack with quick slants with Michael Thomas. And I actually want to see that offense open up again. I would love to see the opportunities. And Jameis Winston, we're not behind closed. We haven't seen much from him as a Saint. We didn't get the opportunity this year. It was Taysom Hill. And listen, if Hill's the starter, I'm buying Hill. I think him with his rushing ability, just take the cheat code. I mean, it is what it is. Like it's until we change the fantasy layout, it's the cheat code when a guy can rush for 50, 60 yards a game. So if Hill is the starter, I think it is a problem though for the rest of the guys. I think Alvin Kamara showed that he was no longer an RB1 with Taysom Hill because the passing game was completely evaporated with him. And Hill basically fixed on Michael Thomas. Now, Thomas had some productive games with Hill. So I think Thomas is probably the only guy I'd still feel comfortable with. But are you taking him in the first round? I don't know if you're doing that. That's the problem. It's all about ADP. And that's if you're going to take Michael Thomas, he's probably going to be a 1-2 turn pick this year behind guys like Hill and Adams and maybe Stephon Diggs. So I think, with that perspective, I probably won't be touching the Saints. But if Winston is the starter, that changes my mind a little bit. If he wins out and actually beats Hill, I think if he can really open things up, and as much as we hate to say it, his interceptions actually create opportunities because we saw the 2 years ago.
Look at where he finished in 2019 when he threw 30 friggin' 8 interceptions. Like they had to keep playing. They had to keep slinging the rock. That's a good thing for fantasy purposes.
I know.
And it's a great thing for streaming your DST too, because you always knew who to fucking pick when Winston was out on the field. So he can help people on both ends of this thing if he wants to light it up. Saints are what the Saints are. We are done with the NFC South. Before we move off the NFC South, though, we gotta throw a plug in here for our boys over at the Jersey Jungle. We just got done talking about Drew Brees. This guy is an absolute first ballot Hall of Famer. He is going to be remembered as one of the better quarterbacks, that have ever played the game. And if you've been able to watch football for the last 15 years, like Sky and I have, then you probably appreciate somebody like Drew Brees more than the young guns. But look, if you don't yet have your Drew Brees jersey, you need to go get yourself a Drew Brees jersey. This guy is an absolute stud. Hang him on your wall because he fucking belongs there. And if you're smart about it, you're going to the Jersey Jungle in order to get that jersey. Hit him up on Instagram at the Jersey Jungle, as you see on the screen here. Tell them TCK sent you. Use that TCK code. You can get some deals, 10% off a jersey or 2 if you want. Buy all the colors. Buy every Breeze color there is. You can get a 3-pack for 15% off. Frame those fuckers. Hang them on your Hall of Fame wall in your basement. Bobby, you got a Hall of Fame wall, don't you?
I do. Of course I do.
Everybody's got a Hall of Fame wall. Mine doesn't have anything on it yet, but that's just because I haven't decided who to start with. I think Breeze might be the guy, and I think Jersey Jungle's the ones to do it. Beautiful jerseys, half the price that you'll get them on NFL.com. That's before you use the code. So check them out. Everything you need to know right there on the screen. Let's move on. Bills paid, right? So we're going to go now to the NFC. Where are we going? West, baby. We're gonna start with the San Francisco 49ers here, talk about some coaching changes because technically there are coaching changes. But if you're of my mind, I don't know that those coaching changes mean a whole lot. Kyle Shanahan, still the head coach, the offensive mind, the guru behind everything that happens in San Francisco, but he lost some coordinators to other positions. So Mike McDaniel, previously the run game coordinator, steps in as the figurehead OC, and DeMeco Ryans steps in as the defensive coordinator on this team. Now, if you're picking an assistant somewhere on the San Francisco 49ers squad to take over as OC, I think the run game coordinator was probably a good place to start. What they've been able to do is with guys like Mostert and Breida, McKinnon and Coleman, Jeff fucking Wilson, Kyle Juszczyk. These guys are 130 yards plus per game, every fucking game, every year, nearly a touchdown and a half on the ground per game. They're studs. Nothing's likely to change here, right? The only thing I will say this about Mike McDaniel: before becoming a run game coordinator, he spent some time as a wide receivers coach. So this hire might have something to do with, the young wide receivers on this team, right? Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Sky's boy, Jalen Hurd. These are young guys. It might be the second or third youngest wide receiver room in the league. Maybe he's here to help them grow a little bit, grow into a role that we started to see them sort of take over between Ayuk and Samuel at the end of the season last year. But not a lot to change on this team. Is there going to be a lot to change? Anything that we should really think about here, Bobby?
Well, I can tell you this. Kyle Shanahan is just, I think he might be one of the most underrated coaches. He is just a run game guru. I think every time like Smash Mouth, like these old, Campbell wants to run the football. He wants Kyle Shanahan style running. Like, they make it look effortless, but they don't just keep slamming a guy into the back of the wall. And you're right. You name the player, you stick them back there, they're getting 130 yards in a game. It's nuts. And I think that's stuff we have to look at, though. So Raheem Mostert's under contract still. Jeff Wilson just got re-signed. Those guys are going to duke it out again. Tevin Coleman at least is going to leave. Jerick McKinnon's now gone. So there would be nice to see some more clarity. But the thing is with Shannon, they do use the hot hand. So, like, when a guy's hot, he's going to keep getting the start. The problem is draft season, you have no idea who that could be in week 3. So it's been rough from a fantasy perspective because we're usually wrong when it comes to Shanahan. And it's been like that even with his dad. He would pick guys off the street and they would rush and become fantasy relevant. But the one thing that is very important with this team is Jimmy G. Is he going to be healthy finally? I mean, the guy has not stayed on the field. Nick Mullins has done a decent job. CJ Beathard sometimes pops in there and does some stuff, but you need to see more consistency at the quarterback position for this offense. Kyle Shanahan is too good of an offensive mind to be wasted. He's being wasted by these mediocre quarterbacks and quarterbacks not staying healthy. So monitor Jimmy G's status this offseason because with Kittle coming back, hopefully they re-sign Trent Williams at left tackle because he's a stud. But also the wide receiving core. I mean, we just talked about Jalen Hurd has not even seen the field, but according to our expert, Sky, he says that he's the best wide receiver on the team. So with him, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, there's just a lot of mouths to feed. That's something we have to factor in because when you're drafting these guys this offseason, outside of George Kittle, is there going to be enough target volume to consistently keep Ayuk, Deebo afloat along with George Kittle? We haven't seen it yet. We really haven't seen a Shanahan system would have 3 fantasy relevant pass catchers in a long time.
The only fantasy draft advice I can really give anybody with any confidence here is that if in a best ball tournament you draft all of the 49er running backs, you're going to have a stud each week. Okay, put them in best ball.
There you go.
You don't have to think about it. That's my advice to you. Yeah, real interesting. The word that pops to mind here, even in the defensive coordinator hire, DeMeco Ryans is a promotion from within. The word that popped into my head is one of your words. It's continuity, right? Like they're not going to do anything to change anything that's happening on this team. Obviously, last year was a down year, but that had very little to do with the coaching schemes, right? We had a lot of injuries on this team. I mean, like every fucking buddy on this team was dealt serious injuries. So if they can stabilize a little bit on the injury front and keep personnel on the field, we know that this is a coaching staff that can win games with the guys that they've got out there. So solid team once again, but you're not wrong, Bobby, drafting guys on these teams. There's a reason their ADP is always sort of in the lower middle rounds because we just don't know, right? We just don't know. Although I bet Mostert pops up pretty damn high going into draft season. I think he'll end up being like an early 3rd round guy, maybe 2-3 turn guy that I don't want anything to do with.
Yeah, handcuff him. Just get Jeff Wilson on, stash him on the bench for at least a week, and then see how things go.
He'll be free, right? Because people forget about a guy like Jeff Wilson Jr., who whenever he steps in is great. So you can pick him up probably in the 13th round. So maybe that's a combination that you do. Just know that you're going to pick wrong once or twice during the season and lose a game for it. But, maybe you can sacrifice a couple of games. All right, let's move off of the 49ers here to another team that is, no new coaches. And we're not in the 2nd year of a system. 3rd year of a system, however, so maybe some things of interest. It's the Arizona Cardinals, the new home of J.J. Watt, Cliff Kingsbury head coach, Cliff Kingsbury offensive coordinator, Vance Joseph defensive coordinator. What I would like to say here before I turn it over to you to give us your take on the Cliff Kingsbury offense and whether it can repeat as what it was this year is this. I want to talk about Vance Joseph for a second because in year 1 with Vance Joseph, like historically, every place he's gone, the defense in year 1 was not good. Took a huge leap in year 2. Everywhere he went, Cincinnati, in his previous job, but here in Arizona, it happened again, right? In his first year, they were 28th in points allowed. Last year, 12th. They were 32nd in yards allowed in his first year. Last year, 12th best. They were 31st in passing defense. 10th best last year, and they went from 26th in pressure to 8th in quarterback pressures last season. I think this defense is getting a lot better. That allowed the offense to do what they wanted to do, and I think that's going to take another step forward and just open things up for whatever they want to put together on the offensive side of the ball. What do you expect? What do you think is going to happen? Are we going to see a repeat?
Well, I can tell you this. I think I would like to see more creativity for DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, it seemed like he was running a lot of these quick out routes, and they're just throwing 7-8 yards downfield and hitting him on the sideline too much. And outside of a Hail Mary, which they were on a ridiculous start, and then they just started falling apart. And outside of that one Hail Mary, which was sick, they didn't do much in the second half. And I think when I look at this offense, I was extremely disappointed with Kenyan Drake. I was looking at him as one of the guys that I was looking to take a next step. Always seemed like he was underappreciated and finally got his chance in the Cardinals 2 years ago, and he looked great. But he is a free agent, and I think Chase Edmonds is a name that a lot of people have to monitor because he was fantastic with his limited opportunities, and then became like kind of a full-time workhorse when Drake went down. He kind of underperformed, which is super weird. I don't even know why, but Kenyan Drake, with him potentially leaving, I think Chase Edmonds is someone that's going to pop up during fantasy seasons, might be able to get in the fourth round, but if things start creeping into the third, might be a little wary of that. But overall, it was kind of disappointing because outside of DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk really didn't do anything. Larry Fitzgerald wasn't fantasy relevant. And Kyler Murray was more relevant because of his legs than his arm overall. So I think, you would like to see Kyler Murray take the next step in the offense, less unscripted, more scripted stuff for him, utilizing the offense, getting guys more involved, like Christian Kirk, for example. But overall, I think it was a little disappointing. I think DeAndre Hopkins was more of a stud than we thought he was going to be, and that's great and all. But I think Kyler Murray, if he doesn't have that rushing ability, the offense as a passing game offense was kind of disappointing. So you're expecting Cliff Kingsbury to hopefully evolve a little bit this year.
Yeah, people had really high hopes of Cliff Kingsbury's sort of wild offense that he was going to bring to town. We haven't seen that. Kyler Murray was crazy successful last season. I think the QB1 in most scoring formats, but all in the legs. So the defense is getting their shit together. Offense, you're running out of excuses. If Cliff Kingsbury's the offensive stud that whoever hired him thinks he is, then it's sort of put up or shut up time. For me, I agree with you there. All right, let's move on then. Let's go to another team. Who is it? The Los Angeles Rams. No changes on offense. Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell. It's O'Connell's second year as offensive coordinator. Again, a figurehead offensive coordinator there, helping McVay in some kind of way, I'm sure, maybe jerking him off to relieve some of that pregame pressure. But the only real change here is Raheem Morris. On defense, I don't think there's going to be a lot of change. Raheem Morris is a really good defensive coordinator. It's fun watching him in his interviews because he's all kind of ramped up to be able to coach guys like Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. They're little toys that he gets to play with. I think this defense is going to be really good yet again. Sean McVay said going into this past season that he wanted to emulate San Francisco's run game. 2019 was disappointing on the ground. Yeah. And, they went from 401 to 473 attempts, 600 more rushing yards than they had last year. And that's with a whole bunch of injuries and running guys out there that they didn't want to have to start. So maybe that continues. Maybe they really put the ball on the ground and trust Cam Akers to sort of carry this team. Maybe not. They've got a new quarterback in town in Matthew Stafford who can absolutely sling it down the field. What do you expect of this offense? How is Sean McVay going to shift, change, alter what he's doing to make these guys successful for our fantasy teams?
Well, I think the first thing they could do is challenge defenses downfield a lot more. When they lost Brandon Cooks, they basically had no one that can really challenge defenses deep, and it kind of sucked in all the passing game. It was basically Robert Woods on short passes and also Cooper Kupp. Both guys had average ADOT under 7 yards, which is pretty low for wide receivers. So I think that Matthew Stafford naturally is going to be able to challenge defenses again downfield, but they still need to find that deep threat. I mean, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, great receivers, but they're not known for that. Gerald Everett, who's a free agent now, if they re-sign him, has been known to, go up the seam a little bit, but Tyler Higbee's not that guy either. So I think the Rams are someone to watch. Maybe Van Jefferson could be the guy that steps in as the deep threat, but Stafford is going to bring a whole new level. I'm super excited. I think Stafford could be this year's Tom Brady in the sense that he's going to an established team with established good weapons, and he can take them all to the next level. And I think that, I'm all for it. And I think Stafford's draft cost is not going to get too crazy. I think he's going to be probably right in that 10 to 12 range. And I think that's where I'd probably be okay taking him. I think Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, this to me is exciting. They're going to have a more consistent quarterback that is willing to challenge defenses as well. So I think it's going to open things up underneath for those guys to get more yards after the catch than they already get. And then Cam Akers, listen, down the stretch, he was getting over 20 carries a game. Into the playoffs, we started seeing that. They do want a one-back system. They loved it when they had a healthy Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley was an absolute beast for them. And I think when they have that single back that they can rely on, that offense just hums. But a lot of it came from the offensive line problems 2 years ago. They basically lost Roger Saffold, those guys on the interior, and they didn't replace them. And they thought, we're good. Sean McVay's great. I can just do whatever. It doesn't work that way. You need talent up front. You need a little bit of coaching, and it finally worked out this year. The line improved. So I think overall, I think Cam Akers' scoring potential is skyrocketing because of Stafford. I think Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp as well. I think Woods could take another step as well with the in the red zone because that Stafford's more of a threat there with his arm strength. So I think overall, this is just thumbs up for Sean McVay and everybody.
If you're watching this video, write that shit down. Bobby Lamarco just said Matthew Stafford would be the Super Bowl MVP. That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
No, it's true. The thing is, we had the words come up last time. So,
man.
Yeah, I know that's me. Yep.
I don't hate some of those takes. Van Jefferson's not a deep ball guy either. When they drafted him, he comped super well to Cooper Kupp coming out. Like they don't have anybody on that team to do that. So they'll have to do some work to set that up. Obviously, they have the quarterback to do it, so they need the weapon. So let's watch to see if they go out and find a deep threat guy, either in free agency or late in the draft. You can get these guys real late in the draft. So interesting stuff from an offensive mind that we know can get it done. Let's go ahead and move on. Then we're going to go to the Seattle Seahawks here. So Pete Carroll stays in town. Obviously, Brian Schottenheimer got fired from this squad. It's Shane Waldron stepping in. Speaking of Sean McVay, Shane Waldron's been with him since 2017. Did some pass game coordinator stuff, QB coaching under him, tight end coaching under him. He's done a few things, but that Sean McVay coaching tree is growing faster than any coaching tree in the NFL right now. Here's another opportunity for this guy to step in. Now, I do want to say that, there was big news when Schottenheimer first came in. Carroll wouldn't let him change the playbook nearly as much as he wanted him to. He said, hey, look, we don't have people on the field in the offseason. He let him change about a quarter of the playbook rather than more like 75% like he'd have liked to. Mm-hmm. We'll see if Pete Carroll learned his lesson at all. Maybe he'll let Shane Waldron make some changes, put some changes into this offense. If that's the case, if he does, which is a big if because they may not be on the field much this offseason either, probably a lot more play action put into this offense. LA was over 30% play action pass most of the time that Waldron was there. We know that they like the shorter pass game in LA. Maybe they bring that to Russell Wilson and Seattle if Russell Wilson is there. The big problem with Russ last year, and if you're a Russ owner out there watching this, you loved having him for the first 5 or 6 weeks. And then every week after, you just kept saying, what the fuck? What is going on? What's wrong? I'm here to tell you what's wrong is that all defenses had to do was cover the deep ball. The only thing they had to do was take away the deep pass, and they started doing that, and it succeeded week after week after week. So if Shane Waldron does come over and bring some of the LA offense in here, that short underneath passing route, the play action, quick, get the ball to your underneath receivers, things will open up for everybody. Things are going to open up for Russ because all of a sudden he's got options. Things are going to open up for DK Metcalf down the field because now defenses have to cover that intermediate route zone. Things are going to open up for guys like David Moore, who's really of the 3 wide receivers on that team. And I don't even know if David Moore's back on the team yet. They're going to have to re-sign him. But if they do, he's the best yak guy on the team, right? He's the best underneath receiver yak guy on this team. He's better at it than Lockett and DK, who both thrive on the deep ball. So maybe if he's back on the team, a guy that you can go out and try to pick up. If he's gone, look to see who they bring in that can play that role. I'm not convinced Tyler Lockett can do it. In 2019, they tried to do it with him just a little bit. I didn't love it. Then in the run game, if they do go a shorter offense, if they do try to run a lot of play action, obviously the run game is going to be an important part of that as well with both Carson and Hyde unrestricted free agents this season. I don't think they're going to probably bring either of them back. Carson's probably going to cost too much. Hyde's getting too old. I don't know if DJ Dallas is the guy, the rookie from last season. Maybe they go out and find somebody. But somebody's going to get a shot to run the ball on this offense. Keep an eye on who that is as well. What do you think? How do you like the Shane Waldron offense? Do you expect a lot of changes?
Well, I mean, it should. I mean, like, I think Pete Carroll's stick to defense and let the offensive guys do the offense would be smart.
Not
but
his thing.
I don't know what to tell you. So a lot of the stuff you just talked about, I have in my notes. Like the heavy play action is something that's going to be key for this offense. Jared Goff was one of the top 5 in play action pass percentage last season and the year before that. And that's a way to really open things up for them. Another thing I noticed too is being more on time and on rhythm. Like a lot of the stuff that Russ does, scrambling around and trying to be around loose, he needs to play more in the concept of the scheme, and I think this offense will definitely help with that. So Goff was more of a timing thrower, and I think that's what they're going to try to do with Russ, get the ball out of his hands quicker, get it to his playmakers. Now, that's like you just touched on, who are those guys? Because in yards after the catch, both Woods and Cup were top 10 last year in yards after the catch on the year. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockwood outside the top 30. So really, different types of receivers. But the one thing I will say is this. DK Metcalf is a specimen. I think he can definitely take a ball, break a couple tackles, make people miss. I think Tyler Lockett, listen, he was a kick returner and a punt returner. That's how he got his teeth sharpened in the league. So, that's basically yards after the catch right there. You get the ball and you have to take off. So I think, even in that aspect, Tyler Lockett can do well. And David Moore, of course, he's a free agent. I don't know what they're going to do there. But one of the things about Shane that I realized is that he is a tight end's background. And over the last 2 seasons, especially with Gurley on his decline, they really moved away from utilizing the running backs in the pass game, and they really fixated on the tight ends. Even though there wasn't a true fantasy asset, of course, Tyler Higbee was a monster down the stretch last year, but they've split time between Everett and Higbee. Now, was that because they do different things? If there's one guy, for example, like Will Dissly, well, if you could stay healthy, but Greg Olson's a free agent. Jacob Hollister's a free agent. So if Will Dissly becomes the starter, this offense does use the tight end pretty well. So I think he could be a sleeper. And then we can't forget about Rashad Penny. I mean, Rashad Penny was a first-round pick, and he's someone that they really like, and he just can't stay healthy either. But if he becomes on top of that board right there, I think he definitely could be a fantasy asset this season.
Yeah, whoever ends up being that starting back, I like that. I did forget about Rashad Penny. I don't know. Did he play at all last year? I don't.
Nah, barely.
But things to watch. Yes, two big acquisition positions I'm looking at in this offseason are on this team, and it is who's the starting running back in Seattle and who's going to be the guy that does the underneath stuff, maybe the slot stuff. Who is that intermediate receiver? Because I think if Pete Carroll allows Waldron to run an offense the way that I think he wants to run the offense, 2 very important positions. And look, if Dissly gets the chance, man, I love me some Will Dissly, that big motherfucker. Yeah. Like, he's fun to watch rumble down the damn field. Let's do it. Let's go.
I know. One thing I forgot to mention, too, is that we can't forget about Brandon Cooks a couple of years ago. So there is an element to this defense. So I looked at in 2018 when Cooks was there. He had 24 targets that traveled 20 yards or more downfield. And this season, DK Metcalf had 28. So it's really kind of comparative to that. So I think, there is a role in this offense for a deep threat like DK or Tyler Lockett. The problem is they both did the same thing last year. They both were deep threats like you touched on. So is Tyler Lockett going to be able to fit that Cooper Kupp role? Maybe. We'll see. But I think DK Metcalf, there is still a role for a deep threat. Russell Wilson's too good at the deep ball for them to take it out of this offense.
Yeah. Don't get my words twisted. I'm not saying it's going away altogether. In fact, I think it's going to benefit over the course of the whole season, because when you do things underneath the deep ball, that's how you open up the deep ball. That's why play action works, because you open up the deep ball. All Seattle did last year was run 2 guys straight down the field and throw it to whoever was more open. With a bigger play card and a lot more options for Russ. I like DK. Volume may come down, but again, you don't have to have as many targets if you're not triple covered on every single one of them, right? So could work out. Hey, look, that's the NFC.
Yeah,
that's it. That's it.
I think there's something that's eating at me. We forgot to talk about him, and I want to get your feedback on him.
Oh,
what do you think? What do you think of Adam Troutman, the tight end for the Saints, with Jared Cook leaving? Is that someone you're willing to monitor this offseason to see if he becomes a starter? Is he someone you're interested? Give me your 2 cents.
That's a really good question. I was a Jimmy Graham owner in New Orleans, and I loved it for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. And after he left, I chased the Saints tight end position for years, and I am done doing that. Okay. I went and got a few shares of Jared Cook this year because what he did in 19, and it paid off relatively well when he was on the field. But I'm done chasing the tight end position in New Orleans. I'm no longer interested. I think Adam Troutman's a skilled kid out of Dayton, I believe. My wife's from Dayton, so who knows? Maybe his jersey will end up on our wall, the Dayton Flyers.
There you go.
But go hit Jersey Jungle for it. And anyway, no, I'm not chasing it. Like I wouldn't fault anybody for doing it, right? Because it should be a good offense. He's a skilled player. He should be stepping into the bulk of the work there at the tight end position. But I'm not chasing that anymore.
Okay.
I'm over it.
I mean, listen, I get it. Ben Watson hurt your heart that one season, and you're just over it. Can't go back. Totally understand.
Absolutely done. All right, guys, that's it for us here. Episode 366, the Candlestick Kids podcast, TCK Pod. In the books. We're done. We have one more week, Bobby. You and I are coming back next week. We'll be here probably, you know what? I don't know what days it is going to be yet, but we're going to hit the AFC. We're going to split it up over the course of 2 episodes for you, just like we did here with the NFC. A lot more coaches turned over in the AFC than did in the NFC. So we have more to talk about. I think there's a division, and we won't get it till the end of the week. There's a division that new coaches were hired at every one of these teams in the division. So could be fun. Could be interesting. We'll get there later. For now, we are done. I am Dweeze Nuts. All Z's, no S's. That's my handle right down there. This is Bobby LaMarco, FFX Factor on Twitter as well. Find Lucas_Caser2 on Twitter and TCK_pod. That's Sky, right? Sky's in charge. You're going to want to talk to Sky before you talk to us. He's like our father figure here at TCK. Come on back to us, right? We're going to be doing episodes next week, but all off season long. We're going to be doing a couple of episodes a week at least, right here on YouTube, right here on the podcast. Subscribe wherever the fuck you're enjoying this from, so that you don't miss any of the goodness. It's only going to get better from here. Bobby, if they want to find stuff from you that's not TCK, can they?
No. Of course. Only TCK only here. No, you can follow me on Instagram at Fantasy Football X Factor. I also write for football.rasball.com. I do a couple columns in the off season and expand the box score as well. You are all over the place. It's fun doing the episode with you. I'll catch up with you guys again next week. Bobby, we're going to hit that AFC hard, but we're done. Peace out.